Okay, here's the next video lecture for my high school students, social psychology. We'll call this the first part of the second installment. Again, this is stuff that you won't find in your textbook or anywhere else in class, so you'll need to take really good notes on this for sure. And the instructions in the email that I sent you or am going to send you will go along with kind of what you need to do with this, but you will definitely need to have notes on this. So we're talking about social influence. In class we talked about persuasion already, the attempt of others to alter the attitudes of one or more people. Well, that's what social influence really is. I mean, there are a lot of different people, there are groups, social institutions we've talked about 2 or 3 times already in class who try to change the way you think about things. So just again, social influence is essentially the same thing as persuasion. I'll give you that definition one more time. Efforts by one or more people to change the attitudes or behavior of one or more others. Now, some terms we're going to talk about on this slide. You'll want to have notes on these and essentially the definitions too. Talk about conformity. We mentioned conformity. We also talked about compliance and obedience. We mentioned them just very surfacely. And now we're going to talk about them a little more in depth. So with conformity is a type of social influence where people, they change their attitudes or behaviors to adhere to existing social norms. So I'll give that to you again. Conformity is a type of social influence where people may change their attitudes or behaviors in order to adhere to existing social norms. We've all conformed in one way or another, and we've talked about that in class as well, in terms of maybe the clothes that you wear, the brands that you wear, you know, the restaurants that you eat at, your social media accounts. We all conform to some extent. And social norms are rules indicating how people should behave in certain situations. Social norms dictate largely the extent to which we conform. If I'm in a funeral home, for example, there are social norms. If I'm attending a funeral, there are social norms that sort of tell me what I should and shouldn't do. If I'm attending a funeral, I probably shouldn't stand up and scream and shout and get excited because my football team just scored a touchdown, because I'm paying more attention to my phone than I am the funeral service. So that would be an example. There are social norms for every setting, for classrooms, funeral homes, if you work within your family. There are social norms everywhere that you go. Now, there are 2 types of norms. There are prescriptive and proscriptive norms, and I'll start with prescriptive. These are both types of social norms. Now, prescriptive norms, we'll start there, are norms that tell us what we should do. Okay, again, prescriptive norms are norms that tell us or dictate to us what we should do. It's like being prescribed a medication. You should take it. You should do what the doctor tells you. So those are prescriptive norms. An example of a prescriptive norm: I was always told that I should hold the door for a lady, or that I should hold the door for someone who's maybe physically challenged or handicapped. Those would be examples of prescriptive norms. I should always turn in my work on time. That's what all my teachers told me when I was in high school and college. They're not laws, but they're expectations. Proscriptive norms tell us what we should not do. Okay, so that's the difference. Proscriptive norms tell us things or dictate to us things we should not do. You should not steal. You should not murder people. You should not cheat on exams. You should not, etc., etc. Okay, so. And last on this slide, normative social influence. This is when we conform to meet others' expectations and to gain approval. That's normative social influence. Again, when we conform to meet others' expectations to gain approval. A lot of times we've given in and we've done things, we have said things, we wear clothing, whatever, not because we really want to, or or because we believe in what we're saying, but rather because we want to fit in. And we want to, more importantly, gain approval of others around us. Now, compliance. There are several pieces of compliance. Again, we mentioned compliance, but we really didn't talk about what it is. these terms probably are in your textbook as well. But compliance is a form of social influence where one or more people give in to the direct request from one or more other people. So you want to write that down too. Again, compliance is a form of social influence where one or more people give in to the direct request from one or more other people. So it's a step past conformity. With conformity, no one's asking you or requesting that you do anything. You're kind of doing it on your own to fit in for whatever reason. With compliance, someone is asking you to do something. They're actually making that request. So, the first piece of compliance that we'll talk about is ingratiation. Now, ingratiation is making others like you in some way before you attempt to influence them. For example, I could try to ingratiate myself to you guys in this class. What I'm going to do is, let's say hypothetically, of course, I'm going to ask you to complete a 15-page research paper at the very end of the semester, in addition to your final exam. By the way, I am not going to do that, so don't freak out on me. That's hypothetically, okay? So I'm going to offer a request, okay? I'm going to request that you do this paper. Now, you probably don't want to, but if I can make you like me in some way, then I have a chance at getting you to fulfill my request. So what I could say is, well, okay, 15-page paper, due the last day of class. I'd say what I will do. I will bring in pizza. I'll bring in soda. I'll sneak in all kinds of candy and stuff that I'm not supposed to bring in, which again, I'm not going to do, sorry, just hypothetically. So if I can get you to like me in some way, then I've got a chance at getting you to do what I ask you to do down the line. Now, the foot in the door technique. This is a technique for gaining compliance in which a small request is followed up by a much larger one. So it's kind of like, if you can literally get your foot in the door, then you've got a shot at getting someone to comply with your request. So again, you start with a small request, but then you follow it up with a much larger one. The door in the face technique. This is a technique for gaining compliance where a large request is followed by a smaller request. So the end goal with the door in the face technique is you start off big and you get told no, but then you come back with something smaller, which doesn't seem all that bad, and then people are much more willing to do what you want them to do. Now I'll go back to the foot in the door technique. I wanted to explain these two first, or give you the definitions rather first. Now back to the foot in the door technique. Salesmen and women have been trained to use both of these techniques. I think my wife does this to me, and I don't even realize it half the time. The foot in the door technique. If I can at least get a small request in, if I can at least get my foot in there, I may start off with like, you know what, guys, I'm going to give you one more assignment to do. I know it's extra, it's not on your syllabus, and I know it's Thanksgiving break, but here, let's do this for me. And you might be like, well, okay, it's not that much, it's not that bad. So once I get you to agree to that, then I could pile on to that and say, well, since you've already done this, then why don't you go ahead and do this other assignment too, because they're closely related anyway, so I've got you doing more, really, than what I set you out to do. So, and my wife does this to me all the time. I'll be out, she'll give me a list. I'll be really busy around the house, and she'll give me a list of things. She'll be like, okay, you need just to go to the store and get eggs and milk. That's all you got to do. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. I'm busy, but I got that. So by the time I get to the store, I get a phone call, and my wife is like, well, since you're out, why don't you run on down to, Kmart and get this? And then since you're going that way, why don't you go ahead and go on down to Lowe's and pick this up? So before I know it, she has started off with a small request, but has followed it up with a much larger one, and she's got me. She also does the door in the face thing to me as well. I'll give you an example of that. I'm busy working around the house. I don't want to go anywhere. And my wife will say to me, you know what, Brandon, I need you to go to Lowe's, Walmart, Kmart. And she gives me a list. I'm like, look, I can't go. I'm busy. I really can't do all this stuff. Really, all along, all she wants me to do is go to the supermarket to get eggs. So then what she might say is, well, okay, I get that. So why don't you at least go to the store for me? At least just do that one thing. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I've got that. I win this battle. So really, all along, all she wanted me to do was go to the store in the first place, and that's all. So they're techniques. They're psychological techniques that can be pretty effective. And then playing hard to get. This is a technique for gaining compliance, where people create the image that they are popular or very much in demand. So again, salesmen and women are good at this, producing products or offering products, trying to create the idea that they're very popular. Buy now or while supplies last. They're going to be gone in 5 minutes if you don't buy them right now. It's a technique that can be effective in gaining compliance. And then the last thing we'll talk about on this part of the presentation is obedience. Now, obedience is one more step down the continuum here that we're talking about in terms of social influence. You're not conforming now, and you're not simply complying with a request. Now someone is issuing you an order. So obedience is a form of social influence where one or more people behave in certain ways in response to direct orders from someone else. So again, obedience by definition is a form of social influence where one or more people behave in specific ways in response to direct orders from someone. Your teachers may give you direct orders. You will turn this in Friday. Your parents probably give you direct orders. You will clean your room, you will do this, or I will take your phone. So they're giving you orders. Now you don't have to follow them, but they're orders nonetheless. And a few different components of obedience. We have social contracts, proximity, and fear of punishment. Now when we talk about social contracts, what is meant by this is when we obey orders given to us by a superior without questioning their authority. Again, social contracts is when we obey orders given to us by a superior. It could be a teacher, it could be a parent, a pastor, whoever, without questioning their authority. For example, as children, we eat our vegetables because our parents tell us to. Brandon, eat your green beans. If I'm 5 years old, okay, I eat them. Okay, that's an example of social contract. Proximity. This is a term used to define how our behaviors are affected by other people, mainly how the physical distance between each other affects us. Here's how proximity works. Proximity, by definition, refers to the physical space between people. You could be very close in proximity. You could be far away. If you're sitting in the same room with your sister, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your friend, whoever, you're close enough to touch them, and you're close in proximity. If your parents are 300 miles away, you're far away from them. You're not as it's not as proximal. So here's how it works. With obedience, if your boss or your parent tells you to clean your room, you will clean your room. If they're standing right on top of you in the same room, you're more likely to be obedient because they're right there on top of you. Same with the boss. If your boss is in the same room with you and tells you will do this, and standing over top of you literally, then you're likely to do it. However, if your boss is 300 miles away or works in a different city and gives you an order, you're not as likely to be obedient. You're not as likely to follow that order. And if you do, you're not as likely to do it as quickly. So that's how that works. And then fear of punishment. A lot of people are obedient very simply because they want to avoid punishment, or they are fearful of being punished. In terms of maybe being fired at work, being grounded, having your phones taken away from you, etc., etc. So we'll call that the end of the first part here. Thank you.